More than a decade ago, Dani Foltz-Smith sent her two girls to a new school that had recently opened in Austin, Texas. It was the flagship Acton Academy, launched in 2009 by Jeff and Laura Sandifer to prioritize learner-driven education and enable each child to pursue his or her own hero's journey. Dani's family adored their Acton experience so much so that when they needed to move back to Los Angeles, Dani became the third ever Acton Academy campus after Austin and Guatemala, opening in 2013. Today, there are more than 300 Acton Academy microschools across the US and around the world, serving thousands of learners. I had the chance to visit Dani's Acton Academy, located in Venice Beach, California, a couple of times within the past few weeks, and I'm thrilled to have her on the show today. Dani Foltz-Smith, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. And again, thanks for inviting me to your space, such a lovely space in Venice Beach. So I'd love to hear, Dani, a bit about your origin story of how you went from kind of a traditional educational environment for your children to an alternative education environment, because that's, I think, relevant today for a lot of families as they think about what might be missing in a traditional learning environment and are curious about more learner-driven or individualized educational models. And that was your experience over a decade ago. So maybe we could start there. Of what were you seeing in the traditional system with your girls, and how did you ultimately take the leap into alternative education?
Yeah, so we, way back when our girls were 5 and 7 years old, they were in a traditional school here in Venice. Amazing principal, amazing teachers, but one of the things that we were noticing was just kind of the light or the spark kind of going out in their eyes. They'd always been really curious, really excited to learn, and we found that when they were in a traditional situation, they were people pleasers, and whatever it took to make sure that they were getting it done and the teacher was happy with them and all that kind of stuff. And we just kind of started to see them be just not as curious, not as excited about going to school. And so we started thinking about where should we go? What should we do? What can we do differently? And, our kind of family motto is this whole idea of life of the mind and always be learning and be curious. And we just kind of started thinking about, well, what does this mean for our girls and from an education standpoint? And then we kind of came to the idea of maybe we should start a school. After touring a lot of schools and finding that everything was seeming very traditional, like, what would it look like if we were to start a school that was really centered around this whole idea of curiosity and joy in learning? And we were playing with that idea. We're both coming from the tech industry. We're not coming from an education background. And we started to put it all together, get it, business plans written up. And then my husband got a job offer in Austin. And so it was all about, okay, we're going to move to Austin now and see what that looks like. And we were so lucky that right when we got there, main campus, Acton Academy, had opened. I think they'd been open for a year or so at that point. And we went and toured and couldn't believe that our dream school existed. So we put our girls in immediately. And the changes that we saw immediately were so visible to us. So the confidence that they had in their work and what they were doing, the confidence that they had in themselves, the joy that they had. I mean, when they would get in the car after school, it was a fight to see who could say more. They were so excited to tell us about everything that they were doing. And more than anything, I think it was their ownership that they took, not only of their education, because that's what they were learning at Acton, but also over the rest of their life. We didn't have to have those conversations about something not being fair or being, having that kind of victim mindset, because they were already leaps and bounds of, ahead of where my husband and I were at high school level when they were just in the elementary school, from that kind of like real world life practice kind of a thing.
So, I mean, it was a bit of a risk for you, right? I mean, Acton had just been open a year. You came in the second year with your oldest daughter, and then the following year with your younger daughter. What was it that attracted you to this experimental model?
I mean, I think that my husband and I kind of have that mindset in our lives. When something's not working, go look for alternatives, go look for something different, go find something that's going to work for you. And so for us, it was not even a scary transition for me. That's not to say that I didn't have a lot of defending to do to my family and friends and things like that. People who were maybe, questioning, what are you doing? Are they going to have all the same opportunities that everyone else is going to have? Those kinds of things. But for us personally, what we saw that they were getting out of it instantly, we knew that this was going to set them up for life in such a better way.
And of course, the social proof has emerged over the past over a decade now of Acton Academy's existence, with now hundreds of Acton Academies across the world, and certainly serving thousands of learners. So what was it that maybe you could tell us a little bit about the Acton model? And it would be great to hear your perspective as a parent, kind of in those early days, seeing what your children were doing. You said they were joyful and, had so much enthusiasm for learning, but what were you sort of noticing as a parent? And then as you transitioned into being an Acton Academy founder, tell us a little bit more about the model there.
Yeah. So, I think the first thing I noticed as a parent was that every kind of family rule we had or anything going on at home was up for debate now. It's a very democratic situation at Acton Academy. So like some of the rules that we had at home were now, well, we want to discuss that and we want to understand the why behind it, which, at first could be like, wow, everything now is questioned. But it was so refreshing to see that they wanted to know the why. They wanted to understand the whys behind everything, even if it was just a random rule that we had as a family or in our house. And so that was, one thing as a parent, I was like, wow, they are questioning. And that's so important. They're questioning everything in their lives, in their world, and in the bigger sense of things as well. So, right there, like that was, I can understand maybe why some people would be like maybe frustrated with that. But for us, that was wow. The other thing that I noticed as a parent is that they were so willing to take responsibility and ownership for things, not only in their education, but across the board. And also we're being responsible for getting to know what they needed personally, not afraid to ask for help when they needed it, willing to work with people, willing to work alone, all those different kinds of things. So they were just getting to know themselves so well, which was an amazing thing as a parent to see. And then, as we transitioned into owners, we had to move back here to LA. There was no chance that I wanted to take the girls out of the Acton network. So of course we needed to open an Acton.
You went full circle then, Dani, to opening a school back in Southern California.
We did, yes. Yeah. Which I was really happy to do because, I just saw the change in our family and in our girls, and bringing that to Venice or bringing it to LA or to California, to anywhere, was just something I thought was really needed. Everybody should get the chance to feel trusted in the way that we were able to trust our girls and the learners that we brought on here. And so, our values that we learned while at main campus and we're able to bring here, as far as things like, learning to be and learning to do and learning to learn, are just as important as learning to know. The rote memorization for regurgitation's sake is not getting us anywhere. And the idea of being able to practice real world skills every day from the time you're 5 years old, things like creativity and critical thinking and communication, those things that were going to be important later in their lives for a future that we haven't even figured out yet in this age of Google and AI. We were going to be able to give those skills to the learners who came to our school, practice them daily, starting at the age of 5. So hopefully we are setting them up for a lifetime of just being able to learn and adapt and think about the world around them.
So I love that you mentioned, as a parent, when the girls were at the flagship Acton campus in Austin, just that they very quickly became empowered to kind of question, to push back on authority, to ask why, And that's very much a part of the Acton model. Acton, of course, is named after Lord Acton, who famously said, power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so certainly seeing that expressed in your girls must have been incredibly rewarding, that they really did feel empowered to push back and to seek answers and think critically, which is, of course, what so many parents want today. And your point is spot on about this ever-changing technology-enabled world. We, have no idea what the future holds, but we know that we can hopefully equip our children and teens with some of the skills and qualities to face these challenges and kind of move through the uncertainty and really take charge of their own lives. So when you went back to Southern California, to Venice Beach, you knew that you were going to open this Acton Academy space there. What was that initial startup experience like for you, launching a private school in California, connected to Acton loosely, although independently operated? Tell us about that initial launch.
Well, it's very scary trying to just figure out what that looks like. Just trying to go through like the legal aspects of what it looks like in California, which is different from every other state. And, every state will have its own different requirements and whatnot. So kind of wading through all of that. It was also, early in the Acton network. And so there, were only a few schools doing this. And I can remember us emailing 100-page documents back and forth to each other and making changes, because Google Docs wasn't really a thing then where we could put comments, and we were using Word and emailing huge files. And my early moments of doing this, sitting around our dining room table, we had 5 learners our first year. It was magical, but also like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Am I doing this right? Am I truly equipping them? So it was definitely a year, that first year, especially, of trying to navigate legal, financial, all that kind of stuff, but also totally immersing myself in, are we doing this right? Am I truly setting them up for success for no matter what they want to do? If they want to stay with us and go through the Acton system all the way through graduation, or if they want to transfer out. It was also a great time of growth for me, and just really being excited about all the new things that I was learning. As somebody who has a very different background from what I went to college for and what my career was before this, I was ecstatic to be learning alongside of our learners. And that's something I've continued for the last 10 years. I learn something every day being here in the studios and with these learners. And so my growth was just huge as well, but also starting to realize, like, wow, we haven't thought about this skill that's going to be important in the future too. And wow, how can we address this skill and how can we build it? And also knowing that, all 5 of those learners were really great at kind of sniffing out the stuff that's not as good. They could be very good and sometimes ruthless and like, yeah, this is not relevant. I don't really know if I need to be learning this, or why are we working on it this way? And so that was a really good thing too, is that they were able, in that first year especially, they were able to take so much ownership as learners with building our school and really setting the precedents for how things would run here. My girls coming out of the main campus kind of had an idea in their head, well, it should run like this, but then bringing in a few new learners who had other ideas really helped us to define who we are and what we look like here in Venice.
And it must have also helped, Dani, in the kind of scaling of the Acton microschool network, right? That you were the test case for what would again become many hundreds of microschools and continues to grow kind of exponentially. So that must have been exciting too, to not only be thinking of your role as a founder of an individual microschool, but also part of this much larger network, and how could what you were learning be able to inform other founders that were thinking about launching Actons? What was that like in those early days where you were kind of influencing or inspiring others?
Yeah, I mean, early on, it was definitely like, oh, it's just us and a couple others, and we got to figure this out. But then as other owners came on. It was so amazing to be with other like-minded people that we could bounce ideas off of each other. And then I really started to feel like we were in this true, amazing experimental time where we were all trying new things and sharing it with each other. And oh yeah, this worked really well for me, and this worked great for me. This one didn't work so great. And just that period of just like, we're just trying, we're just figuring this out, and we're gonna just like throw a bunch of stuff at a wall and see what happens and see what works, and that's okay. We have the time and the space to do that, and then to be able to share that with each other. And the new owners coming in, the things that I was learning from them bringing in fresh perspective. And it's still like that. A brand new owner, I will still learn so much from, because of the fresh perspective that they bring to the table and reminders of things that I haven't thought about in 8 years. That's also really important. So very exciting time for me to find those other like-minded people who wanted to reimagine education.
Yeah, and I want to get into a little bit more what you've seen, the changes and growth over the past decade. But I think it must also be interesting, as you see new founders coming on, to remember back to your early days as a founder. And you were running your Acton Academy as sort of a home-based microschool, if I recall, for that first year, and then moved to a dedicated space in the subsequent years. So tell us a little bit about how you went from kind of your home running this, pilot program there with 5 learners to then really becoming more established.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, that first year in our home with 5 learners around my dining room table, magical, amazing. I'm still, very much in touch with all those learners, like weekly. They come back to help guide every time they're in town, because most of them are in college now. When they're back in town, they're always coming by. They come to our exhibitions. That said, I was ready to have my house back being my house and have it clean again. It was a mess. And because, it's messy. When we're trying to experiment with things, learning is messy, the space is messy, everything. So we started looking for a space in Venice. We wanted to stay local here. We really wanted to, serve this community. And as you know, LA is so big that sometimes even traveling 5 miles to a school can take so much time. So we really wanted to stay super local. So we started looking for space. As many of the Acton owners I'm sure have talked about, it's not easy finding space, especially in large cities that are zoned correctly and all that kind of stuff. So when we finally stumbled upon a few that would kind of fit the bill for us, and we had our families taking a large part in that search as well. The learners all toured the spaces that were potentials for us. The parents toured, everybody was looking. So it was a community effort. Especially at that point, we knew that we were going to have about 15 learners moving into that space. And so even learners who had not started with us yet were a part of the process of helping us find the space and weighing in on the space that we took. So it really did feel like the community was building everything from the ground up.
And so then you became a recognized private school with dedicated space, and it is and was a K-12 kind of mixed age microschool. That's how the Actons run, but you do have several different studios. I wonder if you can share a little bit about how the studios work.
Yeah, we do. We have 4 studios. And our youngest studio is what we call our Spark studio. And that is approximately 5 and 6-year-olds, sometimes a 7-year-old. When they're ready to really start working a little bit more independently, they'll move up to what we call our foundation studio or our elementary age studio. And, Spark is really about it's about fun and finding joy and being curious. And then once you move up to our foundation, our ES studio, it's still all about finding joy and having a lot of fun and learning. But now we're starting to be a little bit more getting into our time management and what does self-accountability and peer accountability look like. And that's approximately ages 7 to about 11. Again, none of our studios are set with ages. It's when you are ready to move up to that next level that you make the move. And it's not like everyone moves in May or August or anything like that. It's literally, if you are ready mid-year, you move up mid-year. Our middle school studio is what we call our navigator studio. And that's where they're really starting to manage their own calendars and daily times and things like that. They're starting to figure out what it means to work really hard while still having a lot of fun in the learning. And then after that, they progress on to our, what we call our launch pad is our high school. And that is where they're working on their next great adventure. And so, yes, we are fulfilling, the requirements that we need to fulfill to graduate in the state of California, or if you want to go to an elite college, what that looks like. But at the same time, we are really figuring out what is next for me. What are my passions? What is my calling? And how do I get there?
So I think, some people listening might just say, kids can't be this self-directed, right? Like they need to be told what to do and when to do it. And, this can't possibly be real. And yet you see every day that this is real. And I, on one of my visits to your space, happened to see this in action where a boy had his own kind of math goals that he was working on and was ready to move to the next mathematical platform, which is much more advanced. And it's like, this is so natural to them, so focused on their own goals and motivations. Share a little bit more about that for those who just can't believe this is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the main thing and one of our core beliefs is that young people are so much more capable than the world gives them credit for. And when we say, I believe in you, I know you can do this, they take it so seriously. And they run with it. And we have a thing here that we always say is with great freedom comes great responsibility. And they take that so seriously and they step up to the plate in ways that we never imagined that they would. And so I think, you saw it when you were here. I get to see it every single day. When somebody says, I believe in you and I know you can do this, you do it. You do it. You really take control. And I think that, just us having that idea too, that we believe that every young person is a genius and we say it and we make sure that they believe it really makes a difference in what they're able and capable of doing, which is so much. But yeah, we put it in their hands. And I think there's a little bit of like positive peer pressure too. They see others doing it and getting excited about it. And they also, because failure is not a bad thing here, failure is celebrated just as much, trying and failure celebrated just as much as successes. They start to lose that fear that they had, or they gain the confidence that they needed to take that next step. And so when they are pumping each other up all day long, great things happen. And I'm so inspired and so grateful that I get to witness this with these amazing humans every single day.
And you've seen so much success and progress over the past decade plus, both at the micro level with Acton Academy, Venice Beach, as well as Acton Academy, the network as a whole. You had your first group of graduates, including your two girls who are off to their next great adventures and doing well in their kind of chosen pursuits, and other graduates from your program as well. And then the larger Acton network, of course, has grown leaps and bounds since those early days. As you think back and kind of reflect since your initial introduction to Acton and what's occurred over the past more than 10 years, what are your thoughts?
Oh, so many thoughts. I think that what I've been able to see in our graduates, and especially those who started 10 years ago with us, 8 years ago with us, just seeing them grow into such capable adults who know themselves so well speaks volumes to what the network stands for and what our core values are and all that kind of stuff. Seeing the growth of the network has been amazing because it just tells me that we are all so ready to reimagine education, that it can be so different, and that we are preparing for a new and different world that we haven't imagined yet.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, you finish what you were going to say, please.
I was just going to say, like, it's been, as I mentioned, like having this group of like-minded owners opening up, but now this group of like-minded graduates and learners who are still with us. my daughter was actually lucky enough to attend the last owners conference where other graduates or other alumni were there. And for her to be back with her people, as she said it, people who understand what it means to own your education and to be learner driven and all that. She was just, I don't know, so re-energized after that conference herself. I mean, she's been away at college for a couple of years and is loving her program and loving her peers there, but she also, you know, says there's nothing like Acton learners who just get it. They get her. So
that's so great. So
yeah.
Dani, let's talk a little bit about the financial model. You know, microschools in general and Acton Academy in particular are sort of intentionally low cost, and the sort of drive to provide accessible education. I know for you at your Acton Academy, you're what, a third of the cost, maybe, or at least a half of other secular private school options in the area. Tell us a little bit about the kind of affordability and financial piece of this.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is we really want this type of education for everyone. And so, you know, our goal is to continue to drive down cost as much as possible. Our goal is to be able to offer scholarships. Eventually, we're not there yet, but that is really important to us. We live in an expensive city, expensive rent, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so we do have to take that into account, but we will continue to try to drive down our cost as much as possible, you know, especially as we get better and better at being truly learner driven and the learners really taking full control of the campus. You know, our hope is to drive the cost even lower, get more people in here, give the scholarships, and get this model available to even more people.
Yeah, and we're seeing that really happen across the country, particularly in larger Actons, where the learners are really running the show, and you can have the learners be empowered and not have that sort of staffing costs or the kind of bureaucracy that we find in traditional schools and educational models just doesn't exist in microschools or at Acton. So all of that makes these programs so much more financially accessible to more families.
Yep.
So, you know, entrepreneurship, of course, is baked into the Acton model. It is defined by not only, of course, the founders being very entrepreneurial, but the individual now Acton owners, more than 300 of them, who are entrepreneurs, in many cases, like you, from kind of business backgrounds, entrepreneurial backgrounds, in your case, tech backgrounds. That just feel pulled to create a learner-driven, you know, educational alternative for young people in their community, very often their own children as part of that cohort. So, you know, part of the ethos of Acton is entrepreneurship, and the Children's Business Fair is a part of that. I wonder if you can share a little bit more about the Children's Business Fair, how it ties into Acton, and the success you just recently had in your fall Children's Business Fair.
Yes, Children's Business Fair, one of our favorite events of the entire year. We run an entrepreneurship quest here at Acton. It is one of our projects that we do every single year. And this quest gives learners the opportunity to really figure out maybe a product that they want to sell, a service that they want to sell, run it through the entire business process of trying to figure out, you know, what is my messaging? Why do I care about this? How am I going to sell it to customers? How am I going to convince people that this is something that they want or need? As well as the number side of it, really figuring out, understanding profit and all the different kinds of costs that go into starting a business. And so the Children's Business Fair, it culminates, the entrepreneurship West, and then it culminates in this Children's Business Fair, which is a one-day marketplace where learners who are not only Acton learners, anybody in the community can apply and be a part of this. And we had a huge number come from outside of our school. And we repeat people now. That's the beauty of it too, is we keep having the same people come back to the business fair, which is amazing. But it is a one-day marketplace where they come, they set up a table where they're selling either their services or their products. They are pitching to customers. They are pitching to judges, local entrepreneurs who come around and talk to them about their business plan, talk to them about where their idea came from and why they're passionate about it. What they would do differently if now that they're here, those kinds of things. There are awards that are given. They make a lot of money. And we get a lot of people coming in to buy. It's such an amazing experience. It always gets such great feedback, not only from our learners, but from community members, from the other people who participate. And then I think one of the biggest pieces of this is the reflection. So the Monday after the business fair, we spend a couple of hours reflecting on our experiences, coming through the entrepreneurship quest, culminating in the business fair. That reflection piece of what they'll change next year, what their ideas already are for next year, because literally on the Monday morning after that, they have ideas for next year already. They're already working on it. And so that reflection piece, I think, is probably one of the most important pieces of it, because they dig so deep into what they would have done differently, what their plans are, how they were feeling during it, what kind of monsters they want to overcome, whether that they were nervous about talking to the judges, or they didn't feel like they had tight enough pitch for customers, things like that. How they're going to overcome all those things for next year is such an important piece of it. Love this event. It is a big undertaking. It's a huge event, but it is so worthwhile and the best thing we do. I love it.
And I imagine that it gets some parents and other community members more interested in the Acton model. They see your learners and how entrepreneurial they are and how self-confident, and they say, gee, I want in for my kids or my grandkids. So that it could be a part of it as well.
Yeah.
So, thinking ahead now, Dani, you're 10 years into running your own Acton, thinking about 10 years from now, where do you see alternative education going? Where do you see Acton going, the microschool movement more generally? What are your thoughts and predictions there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everyone is starting to realize that what we've got in a traditional realm of what's being taught in traditional is not going to be what gets us to the future as a world, as a country, as a human race. And we need to start thinking about some different things. And we need to start doing that early on. We need to start doing that in kindergarten, when you're 5 years old. And so I think that the movement is now big enough that even those in a very traditional situation are going to realize we need to start doing some things a little bit differently to make sure we're getting those skills to these learners that they're going to need. I think the network is just going to continue to grow. I think that there are more like-minded people out there who want to do this, and they want to do it for their own children. They want to do it for their community. And there's, places that don't have access to an Acton right now. So there is opportunity. So I think that the network will continue to grow. I think that the whole idea of micro schools and that movement will continue to grow, because I think that, one of the things that I love about our school and what we can do is we're so agile. We can see that, this isn't working today, we'll change it for tomorrow. We do not have to go through a big bureaucracy to get anything changed. We're just going to change it tomorrow. And we're going to hear the learners, and we're going to do what we need to do to make the change. And I think that, smaller schools or micro schools and stuff can be adaptable and agile like that, and continue to build this community that we have here. And I think that, Actons come in all shapes and sizes and all that kind of stuff. And you always know when you're at an Acton, you hear the language, you see what the learners are up to, and it doesn't matter about the size. What matters is that the community that the learners have built there. And I think if we can still, if we can keep building those communities, and it's also super easy for the learners to switch between those communities. We do have, our learners have lots of friends at other Actons, and they'll visit and they'll exchange and they'll talk online and all kinds of stuff like that. And so I think that the whole movement of like smaller, individualized, learner driven education is going somewhere. And I'm excited to see where the next 10 years takes us, because I feel like things are really starting to take off right now, is what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I feel the same way and am very excited as well. So Dani, if any of my listeners or viewers are interested in launching an Acton Academy, what is the process for that? It's not an easy process. You get thousands of applications from prospective entrepreneurs who want to launch an Acton, but share a little bit about what that process would be for anyone curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would go to the main Acton website, so actonacademy.org, and there you can jump in and start the application process. And I think the biggest thing is knowing your why. Why do you want to start an Acton Academy is really the biggest thing about taking the first step and putting in that application and getting the ball rolling. Is
Yeah. And
why.
I'm sure you would also agree that reading Courage to Grow by Laura Sandifer should also be kind of a first step in learning more about that model.
Yeah, and I actually think that is probably the first step on the application. I haven't looked at that application in a while, but I bet it's really high up there. The first things you have to do is read that book. That book is an amazing tale of how Acton came to be. So yeah, that is definitely the main one you should read.
So final question for you, Dani. What has been your biggest reward as for being an education entrepreneur? What has that experience been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that seeing, number one, as a mom, seeing my own two girls come into themselves and know what they want out of life and go after it in ways that were, unexpected. My girls are two very different kinds of learners and have taken two very different paths, but they both know who they are and what they need and where they're going. So that's been extremely rewarding. And I don't have to feel scared for their future. I know that they are so capable and that, whatever the world looks like in 10, 20, 30 years, they're prepared for it. So as a mom, that's been the biggest reward. I think from starting this school, seeing learners who maybe came to us so disillusioned and so sad about going to school and feeling that they weren't smart or they didn't have anything to offer, seeing that turned around and now seeing them as confident, capable, excited humans that are spreading this joy through the world has been really important for me. Seeing that light go back on in their eyes, seeing them get excited, seeing them have confidence in themselves, knowing that they can do things, it changes their whole personality. It changes who they are. And so that has been really one of the most rewarding things for me, is that I hope I'm just making a difference in a few lives of some heroes, and so grateful that I get to walk alongside them and see this all the time.
Oh, such important and life-changing work. Dani, what is the best way for folks to learn more about your Acton Academy, connect with you, follow you?
Yeah, so we are on Facebook, Instagram, Acton Venice, our website, actonvenice.org. We have an open house coming up. We have lots of them scheduled. You can always schedule a tour here. Call me directly. I pick up my cell phone, so my number's on the website.
Dani Foltz-Smith, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.